Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is. It is 2 p.m. Eastern on a Monday, and it is my favorite time of the week. It is time for Thrive, the show where we dive into the strategies, discuss the steps, everything that you need to know to really turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. Now, I got a great guest today. He goes and is known as the Sales Dojo. We're going to really dive into neuroscience, tactics, strategies you need to know to sell more effectively. So hold on, we're about to get started. All right, welcome back and welcome to the show, Christian. Excited to have you here.
Thanks so much, Meredith. Appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so you are a master of influence, a master of persuasion. You really use very scientific techniques as they relate to sales, and you are known as the Sales Dojo. Now, for members of our audience that don't know what a Sales Dojo is, enlighten us a little bit.
Man, well, I appreciate the intro. I don't know if I'm a master yet, but always working on it. The Sales Dojo is basically a place for salespeople to come in and learn how to sell. And then on the back end, sometimes we service some businesses as well with just various sales things.
So how did you get into the sales space?
Man, I got into sales because I was super I was super naive. So I got into sales for stability, shockingly enough.
There you go. Yeah. Such a
Maybe
stable
not,
industry.
yeah, maybe not in the same way that a lot of people think of stability. So I was a music teacher before I got into sales at a high school. So as a high school teacher, I was teaching high schoolers day after day. And basically, right after COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Especially as music teachers, because it's not really like the most essential work, right? We like to say that it's great and all that kind of good stuff, but a lot of people lost their jobs. And my wife, I was 6 months newly married at the time, and basically I was like, man, if we go through another situation like that, I don't know that I'll have a job. And so that's the stability that I was looking for. I was like, okay, what is a skill that I can learn? What is something that I can do that will always have job security if I'm good at it? And did lots of searching, lots of talking to different people, and basically found sales through that. And I was like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. So then, I mean, after that, the rest is history. Basically, just learned from a bunch of different people, got in lots of different practice, and years later, here we are.
Yeah. So I'm curious, right where you started from the beginning. I think sales, I fell into sales as well. But to me, sales is control. If you can sell, you will always have a job. If you can build relationships and connections, you will always have a job. And our society seems to be getting more and more void of people like that. But why is sales so difficult? Why is it a skill that that at this age still needs to be taught?
Man, I think this age even more than before, sales is really interesting. I kind of just view it as being able to connect with other human beings. And this day and age, you can argue that people are less connected than ever and less skilled and adept at connecting with people than ever. There's sites like, I mean, Omegle, where people will literally just like go online just to meet strangers because they don't have that connection in their lives. Like, it's crazy. And so if you're able to connect with people, then sales becomes very easy. But the problem is that people are so incentivized in sales in order to make the sale rather than connect with the person. So people come into sales and they're like, oh yeah, I'm in sales, ready to close the deal, ready to like, go out and prospect, blah, 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 blah. But the thing that moves sales forward isn't usually like the sales vibe. People hate a sleazy salesperson, but they love to connect with other human beings. And so if you're able to, I think, connect with people and separate yourself from the commission. That's why sales is so hard. People are just so absorbed with making the commission because that's usually how you're paid, right?
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, your journey in discovering sales. So you come across this profession. It sounds like you hadn't done much selling before you
No.
came across this stable profession. Did you have the same reaction that most people have? Like, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to get into that."
Oh
And
yeah.
what kind of pushed you, what got you over that bridge?
Man, I definitely was very hesitant to go into sales because I had what I feel like is the same view as a lot of different people. Like, in my mind, I pictured the pushy salesman, the people, you're walking down the aisle at the mall and people are trying to get your attention, like all that kind of stuff. That was what
Yeah.
was in my head. And I kind of just said, screw it anyway. And let's just try it and see what happens. Because sometimes our views of what the world is are wrong. And so I was open to being proven wrong and learning a better way. So I
Mhm.
just started seeking out that method of selling, and came across the wealth of knowledge that's out there in terms of sales training. I really focused on the idea of authentic selling, of using psychology in order to work with human behavior rather than against it. And I invested somewhere a little bit north of about $500,000 into my own sales training in the past few years. And so it's just slowly grown and grown and grown in terms of just knowledge set. Because I'm sure Meredith, like some people will teach one way, and then another
Yeah.
people will teach another way, and sometimes they're complete opposites. And so
Right.
you kind of have to figure out, okay, where do I lie on the spectrum? But it's been
So
crazy.
what did you find most valuable?
Most valuable, I would say, in terms of like sales philosophies or methodologies or techniques.
Or any of them.
All of it, man. That's a tough one. I would say the mindsets
Yeah.
of a successful salesperson and being able to um, hold someone to the potential that is inside of them
Okay.
rather than the things that they're saying. So what I mean by that is both externally and internally. As a salesperson, sometimes the conversations can get pretty deep, right? And
Okay.
if you're doing it right, they probably will go fairly deep into this person, their desires, their motivations for their life, what problems they're experiencing, how that's affecting them personally, all sorts of different things. And when you get into those conversations, more often than not, we as humans, it's existential everywhere in the human race, but we often don't choose the things that we know that we should because they're hard, because they're painful, because we know it's going to take work, it's going to take time, maybe some limiting beliefs. And so lots of people know the right decision, but being able to make that decision day in, day out is what we struggle with, right? It's a reason
Yeah.
that I don't know what it is, like 60% of America is overweight.
Yeah.
People know that they should go to the gym. They know that they should eat more healthy, but why don't they? Because it's
Right.
hard, right? And so learning that by way of learning sales, I think has probably been the biggest game changer in terms of obviously number one, making sales, but then also just for me internally in my own mindsets and my own life and my own investments and everything that I do. And so I always think of sales as almost like the ultimate form of personal development because you have to get better for other people in order to then get better for yourself, right? You have to help other people achieve what it is that they want in order to then get paid as a salesperson. So it's like the complete opposite of what the world tries to tell you, which is like look
Yeah.
out for yourself, and it's really interesting.
Yeah. I think that sales really fails because it is so focused. Most of the techniques are focused on you hitting your goals, you
Hmm.
closing the sale, you getting to the decision maker. When I think that sales is really, it's sustainable when it is focused on really focused on other people. That's how you can
Hmm.
do it day in and day out when you feel passionate about really helping other people.
100%.
Yeah. So when did you kind of make the leap from exploring sales to jumping in, and what was your first opportunity in sales?
So I come from the high ticket sales space originally. And so this is helping like the digital marketing space, coaches, course creators, consultants, digital agencies, all that kind of stuff. I actually was running a business at the time where I was helping audio engineers with audio engineer things, and learned about the high ticket model of how I could take this skill that I had learned and teach it to other people, and basically make more money. And so I paid a coach in order to teach me how to do that. And
Okay.
then that kind of opened my world up to the high ticket space and how big it was, how much, what's the word, how much abundance there was in that industry. And so I was like, okay, that could be interesting. And basically my coach had said that he had a opening for a salesperson. I was already looking to leave my teaching job, and I had paid the coach to learn his sales methodology. So I was like, I would be perfect for this. And so that's how I got into it. And then from there, I mean, things really just started taking off. I started learning more about sales. I started investing into these programs, and you just basically learn more and more, you grow more and more, you just keep pressing onward. But it's kind of how the start was made. But I never really had a point where I was half in, half out. I think that was one key to why it
was successful.
Yeah, it's one reason I succeeded so quickly, was because as soon as I got that job with that coach, as soon as I was told yes, I had it, I had left my teaching job. I put in my 2 weeks notice. And funnily enough, it didn't end up working out with that guy. So I was kind of thrown into the fire really quickly and made to learn how to network and grow, all that kind of good stuff. But man, I think it's not always the right option, and it's completely up to whoever is in the situation. And of course, use your own judgment. But the idea of burn the boats can be very motivating.
Yeah, it can be. You definitely have to swim at that point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think, what do you want people to know and understand about sales?
I think sales and just anything in life is about understanding other human beings, and how you can help them. I think lots of people get into sales not because they have this desire to be in this industry, not because they desire to be a salesperson. Like, you go to any kindergarten classroom, you're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would be shocked if I ever heard one say, I want to be a salesperson. It's always something else. And so the way people usually kind of fall into sales is through some other means. And usually it's a little bit more financial based, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest thing about sales is, if you're currently selling, the best skill that you can have is detaching yourself from the outcome. Because if you're so focused on, getting through the forest, you're going to miss the tree that's right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to knock headlong into it. And then you're going to probably run into another one and another one and another one. So lots of people just spend so much time focusing on like this down the road goal that may or may not necessarily happen. Like, this person that gets on the call, even if I'm fantastic at sales, then this may not be the right thing for them. Mm-hmm. And if I am not present enough to realize that, then I'm going to be the pushy salesperson that nobody likes, right?
Absolutely. What do you see as the trends coming for sales in 2025?
I think more authenticity and more skill is needed than ever before. Especially with like the rise of AI as an example. I know personally, I've sold solutions where AI is a really big part of the sales process, from AI lead generation and appointment setting to sometimes even AI based like closing calls and such. Mm-hmm. And so AI is incredible and massively powerful. And business owners are already looking at how to potentially replace human cost and oversight and overhead with AI. And so you have to start thinking as a salesperson, in my opinion, what's the difference between AI and like an actual person on the other side? And there's always going to be some sort of regulations with the government, with AI to keep things compliant and such. But as a person, like that's your advantage, is
Right.
that you are somebody who can truly connect with a person, right? There's times where people are going to want to come onto a sales call with a human being and not just with an AI, because they want to actually talk to somebody. It's that human connection. So being able to connect with people, I think, is one of the biggest skills that is going to be needed. And then, of course, once you make that connection, how do you actually navigate through the conversation to make
Yeah.
sales happen?
Yeah, and I think there's. Would you agree that the ability to connect with people is a skill that's being lost a little bit in today's marketplace?
Absolutely. Yeah. People are online more and more. It's really interesting. My wife is still a music teacher,
Uh-huh.
and I go and visit her school all the time. And she teaches 5th and 6th grade, and it's really
Okay.
interesting going to talk to those kids, because in some ways, like some of them are good at connecting, and then some of them are not. But maybe it's just my bias,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's different than when I was in school, right? When I was their
Yeah.
age. And so I'm definitely seeing a little bit of a lack of human connection, more focus, on the devices, et cetera, et cetera. And you can go as deep into that as you want. But I think
I heard
definitely
a yeah,
the
I heard a
ability to
statistic
connect is
today
going
that
down.
said kids are spending 9 hours a day online.
That's wild.
That's
I mean, I work online, so like I spend a lot of time online,
yeah,
but you know,
yeah. Yeah. So, so what do you think the biggest challenges? This so much of this podcast is based on uncertainty and thriving in an uncertain marketplace, and there
mm,
certainly is a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. Most of my clients are still worried about the supply chain issue. They're worried about the labor force. They're worried about quite a few things. And
yeah.
so, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing sales professionals in 2025?
Biggest challenges, I think, is honestly all of the above. Like you kind of nailed a lot of the biggest things that are going on right now. And I think buyers are more skeptical than ever. We're in what I've heard called like a post-trust era as
Yeah.
well. Trust is lower than it's ever been. People are buying less than they ever have because money is tighter than it's ever been. And like in every area, I feel like the economy and the marketplace is just reaching new heights. And so ultimately, it's like what supersedes all of that.
Mhm.
Even if money is tight, even if supply chain issues are going longer than they usually would, if ad costs are going up, all that kind of good stuff. um I think the thing that supersedes all of it, again, just to come back to it, it may sound like a you know clanging cymbal, resounding drum, whatever, is that human connection. Because pretty much every deal that I've seen done, pretty much every single one, and except for those that are just like complete laydowns, I think, are really about the human connection. If people feel connected, if people feel like they've got that rapport, if people feel like this is a real person, they feel that trust, that's realistically what gets things through, especially in this day and age. Because people would rather buy from somebody like that
Yeah.
rather than the opposite, like 99 times out of 100.
Do you think then, when you're talking about authenticity, do you think then the telephone or the face to face, like what do you think are some of the most effective sales strategies for 2025?
I think video calls are great. There's some people who are a little bit more averse to them.
Yeah.
In person trumps all for sure.
Yeah.
But I would say video calls next, and then phone calls. You can still do phone calls very well by like sending a video of you beforehand, so they can kind of picture your face, see who you are, all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, I think in that order: in person, video conferencing, and then phone calls is still just the more they can see of you. At the end of the day, your brain is very adept at picking up on
Yeah.
things that people aren't necessarily just saying. And so if your body or if your brain isn't receiving that input, it feels like it's just missing out on something. And so naturally that trust and that rapport is just going to be a little bit lower than if you're able to communicate non-verbally to a person.
What What do you think that some of the biggest mistakes are that salespeople are making these days?
It's a good one. Maybe being too one-sided in their own mindset of things. So one of the biggest values that I teach in the sales dojo is that things are rarely black and white.
Okay.
There's very rarely a truly singular answer for any question, right? Let's just take as people who are listening to this podcast probably have heard something like success loves speed, right? Basic one-liner. Some salespeople are probably going to be using it to get a deal done faster. But pretty much everything in life can be argued from the other side, like fairly well and aligned with most, values that people find true and logical. And so, just as much as success loves speed, success also loves preparation. And the more time that you prepare, more likely it is that when the event happens, it's going to be more successful, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're going through life believing like X equals Y, or this thing is the absolute 100% truth, there's very few things in life, in my opinion, that are truly like that. And so the more that you can learn to look at things from both sides of the equation, right? How speed might serve in this instance, but then also how maybe going slower might serve in this instance. If you can learn to look at everything in your life from both sides, I think you're going to start to realize that influence is really just realizing what side of the spectrum people are on and how that serves the outcome. That's all.
So, talk a little bit more about influence and the role it plays in sales.
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. I think all the influences is realizing what people's goals are and aligning what it is that you do with those. Like in the dojo, there's a part of a sales call that every salesperson is familiar with. It's the pitch. But I don't actually teach the word pitch. That part of the call, I refer to it as the connection phase, because you're just connecting the dots. You're not saying anything that's new in the conversation. You're finding out that, maybe this person that you're talking to, they have high operational costs, and maybe deals are moving a little bit more slowly than they should be. And, the software tool that you are pitching to them solves those things, but you already found out the problems, the goals earlier in the conversation. All that the pitch is, it's like, remember how you said this? This is how what we do solves that problem and helps you achieve this goal that you mentioned earlier. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Next point. Like, this is what you said earlier. This is your problem. Here's how this solves it. There's the goal. And like, you just do that with each point that you went through in the discovery. And that's all that influence is. I think people overcomplicate things to like, there are certain things that you can do with hypnosis and embedded commands and like really things that I teach more in like the black belt of the dojo once you get really high up. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's not needed 99.9% of the time. Like, you can get really good outcomes and be very influential in your life if you just realize what people want and you help them get it. That's it.
Well, Christian, this has been a great conversation. I always like to end with two questions, and you can answer them in either order. What is your biggest piece of advice for people as they look to head into 2025 and they're faced with all of this uncertainty? What's your greatest advice to help them navigate all this uncertainty? And then, of course, how can people get a hold of you, follow you, find out more about the Sales Dojo and how to be effective in 2025?
Man, I'll hit the how to get in touch with me first, because I know people are just going to get this little nugget and then they're just going to go banana pants because it's really good. So how to get in touch with me, I'm going to put something below, or I'll give it to you, Meredith.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it'll be www.thesalesdojo.co/thrive.
Okay.
So it'll be a landing page just for you if you're watching, if you're listening to this podcast. And inside it'll have a couple of things for you. There'll be something free. There'll be something really low cost. There'll be something with a little bit more commitment if you decide that like you just love everything and you want to go forward with that. Totally cool. But everything will be explained on that page. That's the best way to get in contact with me. And then if you want like Facebook or LinkedIn, I'm on pretty much everywhere. Now, the one biggest piece of advice I think is, if you're in sales or if you're in any situation in life where you have some sort of influence, where there's an outcome that you want, but you're unsure how to get it. It's my favorite singular, most important word in selling, and it is the word why. And it's so interesting because you can go back into history and you can study people who have done incredible things with their lives. One of my favorite ones is Milton Hershey, right? Of Hershey's like chocolate, massive brand, right? He failed at creating the Hershey's company and like making it successful 3 times before he was 40. And then he finally made it successful. But he attributes the reason that it was finally successful after failing for decades before that was this one word. And so it's not just about influence. It's not just about, being able to get what you want in life, but asking the question of why in terms of your circumstances around you, in terms of, if somebody says something in front of you, they say that they have a goal, like, why is that the goal? Why is that important to you? Why now? There's so many different things that you can use just with the word why. And so just learn to use it more. And I guarantee that your life will be better.
Nice. So start with that why, understand why you're doing this, why you want to be in sales, why you want to sell this product or service. Is that basically what you're saying?
Absolutely. Just everything.
Yeah. I feel like the question, when you know your why, you're selling from your heart, not your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So true. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for really enlightening us with another episode of Thrive and helping my listeners learn to turn all of this uncertainty into their greatest competitive advantage. All right, listeners, you know how this works. This podcast episode will be out there. We'll put in the show notes all the great ideas that Christian had for you. We'll see you right back here next week with another episode of the show that helps you puts you in the seat of control and consistently turn uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.